Wait, wait, wait. Error 404. ... The first game that was ever made was a tennis game in 1958, and it was made by William Higginbotham, a physicist, not a programmer. And it took him a couple of hours to conceive the idea and only 3 days to make it. Now, that game was not for sale, it was merely a way to show people that physics can be cool and interactive. And now that you know about the first game, let's go to 1962, where the first game by a computer scientist was created, and he decided to call it Space War. And technically it was the first game that can be sold, but it wasn't. Although it was the first game with a name, because the first game was called Tennis for Two, as you can see, not a very creative naming. So after the creation of this game, the video game industry skyrocketed, with tens of games dropping on the market. Just kidding, it took it 9 years for the next game to come along. But it was in color and they named it Computer Space. And this was actually the first game that can be commercially sold, and it was sold for a whopping $120,000. And just to make it more ridiculous, $120,000 those days are like $1,027,000 these days. You're gonna have to save a lot of lunch money to get this one. Now we could end the video here, but let's keep going and see what happens. So now that we know games costed more than a house back in the day, we will just skip these games at least until we find a game that can be bought without needing to sell your entire family's organs to get it. And for that, we might have to go all the way to 1972 with the release of Magnavox Odyssey. The Magnavox was technically the first gaming console, and it was sold for $420 per unit. But Magnavox had only 3 games that were built with the manufacturing, and that means it's not technically a console, but more of a game machine. Speaking of game machines, in 1980, Pac-Man was released. Each unit was sold for $2,400, which translates to $7,000 in today's money. That said, a lot may think it's expensive, but considering it was the first game to had more than 2 or 3 colors, it was a normal price at the time. Now, Pac-Man was the first game to do many things, and since the creators were Japanese, they wanted to make a game that can be played by girls and boys. And the game became an icon in gaming, with movies such as Pixels showcasing the game as its main theme. And they even brought the developer of the game to participate in the movie, and to be honest, it was the funniest scene in the entire thing. Anyway, Pac-Man was one of those games that became really famous, and it will always be one of those really cool classics. Now this was a game machine, not a game console. You see, the first actual game console was the Atari, and it was for $200, which translates to $850 in today's money. And the Atari 2600 had several games that costed on average between $20 and $30. In today's money, that is around $100. Now you have to understand something. The beginning of gaming history was small and slow, just like any industry. But then it jumped, and there was a lot of games. So it will take a lot of hours to go through all that in one video. So you may notice me skipping a lot of history in this one. But trust me, it's all the same, just with different colors and prices. The most important thing is to see how game prices changed on the first gaming console that we care about, like PS and Xbox. Now that we are on the same page, let's jump to December the 3rd, 1994 with the release of the first PlayStation in Japan. And it costed $300, which means $400 in today's money. And the games had different prices, some selling for $20, others selling for $100. But the Xbox was not better. Even though it was released in 2001 and they called it DirectX Xbox, that is a fucking stupid name by the way, the Xbox was more expensive. It was sold for $500, which pretty much haven't changed since. You see, gaming consoles have evolved in many ways, including prices, and they became cheaper and cheaper. Now that said and done, games on the other hand had seemed to aim differently. by becoming either free to play or expensive as hell. And this video was created and edited for one reason, and that is some assholes in the gaming industry think that they need to bring back the $100 games. And this video is a big fuck you to them. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day and a great fucking game.